Okay, this is our second video in topic 4.5, Maritime Empires Maintained and Developed. And in this video, we're going to focus on European economic strategies to not only maintain, but develop their empires. So in the last video, we looked at the new global web of interaction, and we saw that this is simply connecting three interregional networks of trade through maritime routes. So, what we're focusing on today is what economic strategies did Europe use to maintain their empires? So, when I say economic strategies, I'm talking about political/economic systems. When I'm talking about maintaining, what we're talking about is maintaining the flow of wealth. So ultimately, the essential question for this video, what economic strategies did European rulers employ to maintain their empires? So our claim for this is that from 1450 to 1750, European rulers expanded their market economies and maintained their empires through the use of mercantilism and joint stock companies. This led to the commercial revolution that created an economy based on specialization and using gold and silver for exchanges. So, what I'm talking about is this is the extension of the idea of a market economy to a world level. So, we begin with what we're talking about, their motivations. So, when we talk about theme number one, the motive of these European states, they needed wealth to maintain their states. They needed wealth to pay for their gunpowder empires, to build their castles, to also pay their bureaucracy. So this wealth was in the form of gold and silver. Now, the other thing that this led to was an economic flow that made their people happy and gave them what they needed and wanted. So they're going to be driven by the idea that gold and silver not only equals wealth, but also equals power. This was accomplished in different ways. We know that some people, especially the Spanish, simply found gold and silver and brought it to their nations. Some grew commodities such as cash crops, sugar, tobacco, and things like that, that they sold for gold and silver. And in the Eastern Hemisphere, they controlled trade and brought in gold and silver from that trade. But here's the problem. How do we maintain the flow of gold and silver? And how do we make sure that the amount of gold and silver stays high in our nations? Well, Europe has some advantages over the land empires. First of all, they had the technological advantage. Okay, they had the navigation devices such as the Hartmann astrolabe. They had better maps. They used the compass. All in all, they had the technological ability to bypass overland trade and control it themselves. The second thing is, and this is new, Europe had a business advantage. Europe, for the longest time, had really promoted individual merchants. And these merchants had created the idea of a joint stock company and selling stock to finance it. They're moving very rapidly toward capitalism, in which individual needs and wants drive the economy. So these two advantages gave the king an idea. And that idea was economic strategies that are going to maintain the flow of gold and to maintain the flow of wealth into their nations to make the people happy and to keep their nations powerful. Strategy number one is mercantilism. Mercantilism is simply an economic and a political system in which the governments in Europe came to control their economies and expand their claims overseas. Now, this is important that you remember this. Mercantilism is only used in Europe, but the European nations adopted this system to promote their citizens' overseas trade and to make sure that the gold and silver remained in their empire and could be used as capital to build their own businesses, to pay taxes, and to grow the government. So a nation that believed in this operated trade in this way. Obviously, England wants gold and silver. Okay. So what they do is they establish colonies, they grow a cash crop, they sell that cash crop not only in their own country, but they sell it in other areas, and they get gold from all these exchanges. Now, the one thing about mercantilism is that in the mother country, people have to be put to work. And so in the mother country, the people that are put to work making finished goods. For example, in this example, England imports the raw cotton but makes cotton textiles, and they sell them in the colonies. So the driving principles of mercantilism focus on the idea that gold and silver equals wealth and power, that there's only a set amount of gold and silver in the world, that maritime empire building was designed to bring in wealth, and that colonies were to bring in wealth and only trade with the mother country. And so a good navy is vital. What mercantilism is, it's about control. It's about controlling who sells to whom and where the wealth goes. So if you're a colony, your job is to produce commodities and to buy manufactured items from the mother country. So to do this, laws were passed to make sure that, the English colonies did not trade with the French, that the Spanish colonies did not trade, their goods with other people. So this is something that's going to be designed to keep the wealth flowing. So to kind of get into a little bit greater detail about mercantilism, what we're trying to do is we're trying to keep the amount of gold and silver in a mother country's treasury by having more exports and fewer imports, having a favorable balance of trade. So this creates a relationship between the mother country and the colonies in which the colonies send gold, silver, and raw materials, and the mother country sends manufactured goods to the colonies. Now, understand something, the Industrial Revolution has not occurred yet, but laws were in place to make sure that the colonies only bought from the mother country. So, another way we can look at it is that if England sells 100 yards of cloth to France for 1 ounce of gold, and France sells 100 bottles of wine for England worth of gold, essentially what happens is that, things are equal. But when we begin to sell more and import less, we have more gold coming into our country and we're actually taking gold away. The one thing we all need to realize here is that no country could be 100% closed off from trade with other countries. What you wanted to do is you wanted to make sure to export more to their country than you import, i.e., a favorable balance of trade. So mercantilism was an effective strategy because it created a self-contained economic system in which the people would only exchange gold and silver for things that were produced within the empire. And because of the favorable balance of trade, you're always growing your silver and gold reserves and hurting other nations. The second new strategy was joint stock companies. Financing a colony is very, very expensive, and there's a great risk involved. So what the northern countries of Europe did, and what I'm talking about is Great Britain, France, and the Dutch, is they allowed merchants to pool their resources together to finance it. So this original pool of money would pay for the exploration and colonization, and then the monarch would get 10, 15% off the top. This allowed merchants to make money. This allowed the king to have an income without a great deal of loss. So later, what happens is the king allowed these merchants to sell shares or stocks in their companies to further finance this exploration. This leads to a joint stock company. As you can see above, the two coins represent the Virginia Company, and then we have the flag of the VOC, the largest and most successful joint stock company, the Dutch East Indies Company. So this creates these mammoth companies that were very wealthy, that brought in lots of gold and silver, lots of trade, made the people happy. And the king benefits because one, he gets 10% or 15 or 20% off the top. He sees that he could raise taxes on his people, and all this wealth is flowing. Joint stock companies were very effective because it limited the risk while bringing in large amounts of wealth. This is going to lead to the commercial revolution. The commercial revolution was simply the transition to exchanges based on gold and silver, on market economy. So people and states begin to specialize. Colonies specialize in the production of raw materials. Okay. States in Europe, such as England, specialize in the production of cotton cloth, so forth and so on. So this specialization is designed to sell something that you can sell lots of, to bring in lots of gold and silver so you can get to what you want. So now we're seeing a great deal of trade. This produces capital. Capital is simply money used to make more money. So the government's role in this and their strategies was to kind of develop policies that were pro-trade. For example, we have the transition to a money economy in which money is backed by gold and silver. We have banking. We have limited liability, which promotes investment. Limited liability is the idea that if you invest in a company, you only are accountable for what your investment is. And also we have, laws that promote trade, banking merchants. So what happens is because everybody's trying to get money, we go through the price revolution, which is the gradual increase of prices. So when we look at this as an effective strategy, everything's designed to bring in money to make people rich. So the government can tax, so the people are happy. So what were the economic strategies? Well, they used their technology and business advantage to develop these strategies. And their goal is to maintain the flow of wealth within their empire. So mercantilism gave them control, joint stock companies limited the risks, and the commercial revolution established the flow of gold and silver that they could tax.